Pro Shop. Yeah.
Embassy Suites.
Okay, it's 5:30, and I call this meeting of the Northwest Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called, and that notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551. Now we'll move to closed session. Okay, it is 6:30, and we are going to reconvene our regular meeting and start with the invocation and pledge. Dr. Warren?
All right. Thank you for being here. Glad to see everybody tonight. If you feel comfortable doing so, please pray with me. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to meet tonight. Just thank you for allowing us to be such a part of such great communities and definitely such a great school district in the Northwest. Lord, we ask you to be with our board members tonight. Just bless them and bring them the wisdom they need to conduct our business. Bless the entire meeting, Lord, and just see us all safely home. And above all things else, just please provide your love, your guidance, your wisdom, and your protection to our children. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, folks, we have two very special guests with us tonight to help us pledge. Claire, get on up there. Shane, get on up there. Everybody, this is Claire Donnelly. Wave to everybody, Claire. There you go. Mr. and Mrs. Donnelly, good to see you. Mr. Donnelly, good to see you. Let's see, Claire. This is what Claire says. Claire enjoys math. Good job, Claire. Science, language arts. She is very excited about starting high school at Byron Nelson. Great. She's been accepted to the Biomedical Academy. Outstanding. Dr. Braswell, did you hear that? Okay. That is great. Claire is an avid reader. She enjoys fine arts. She played the violin in the Tidwell Beethoven Orchestra and loves theater. She is active outside of school and taking private violin lessons. Claire, you don't have any spare time, do you? She is also a cadet in the Girl Scouts and an officer in the National Junior Honor Society. This is what her principal said about Claire. Claire is a dedicated student and proud of her work. Although Claire is quiet and kind, she is very bright and wise beyond her years. Tidwell Middle School is very proud to have Claire as an outstanding student. Great job, Claire. Claire, anything to say about your school? Your principal's here, too. You can say something about him.
I just want to say that I'm really thankful for all the opportunities that Tidwell has given me and for Dr. King for being an amazing principal, and I've really enjoyed all of my time at Tidwell.
Oh, you scored some points there, Claire. Good job. All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, then Shane Sproles. Good to see you, Shane. And we have both parents in attendance, our own Steve and Shannon. Good to see you, even though Shannon's not feeling great. Let's see, favorite subjects for Shane: band, Spanish, math, and athletics. I like to play sports, music, play video games, and go camping. Shane is a great student. He is a hard worker. He's organized. He's inquisitive, always seeking to understand, and that what propels him to go above and beyond to challenge himself. Shane always has a smile on his face. He is very kind and funny and has a great relationship with his peers. He exemplifies the strong character and leadership that Tidwell is very proud to have Shane as an outstanding student. Very good, Shane. Anything to comment?
Yes. I just want to say thank you to Dr. King as well for all the leadership he has and all he's done for Tidwell. So.
You guys are so good. All right, so let's do our American flag first and then our Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now Texas.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Very good. You guys stay right there. We got a little gift for you. There we go.
All right, now we'll move to recognitions. Dr. Warren?
All right. Mrs. Conklin.
Yes, we have quite a few, so if you guys can join us to the front. We'll start off with our Adopt a School partners.
Thank you, Emily. Tonight, actually, we're pleased to welcome 3 new Adopt a School partners. At this time, we'd like to ask Prairie View Elementary School Principal Yolanda Wallace to please join us up front. Here now to join us is Bell's Book Nest owner, Judy Bell. Judy, if you would join us up front. Judy and Yolanda have been collaborating at Prairie View. Miss Bell made an initial $1,000 donation of books to the campus library. She and Miss Wallace are also working to arrange visits by authors for presentations. Please join me in welcoming Bell's Book Nest as a proud Northwest ISD Adopt a School partner. I'd also like to know Ms. Bell is a former graduate of Northwest High School. So, thank you. At this time, we'd like to ask Eaton High School Principal Mike Blankenship and Eaton High School Theater Director Nick Kugis to please join us up front. We'd like to welcome Sunbelt Reynolds Power and HVAC Branch Manager Jeff Harris. If you would, please join us up front. Sunbelt Reynolds has been Eaton's theater musical title sponsor for the past 2 years, donating a total of $5,000 in support of NISD and EHS students. Their donation has allowed the Eaton Theater Group students to produce a spectacular show both years with My Fair Lady and Peter Pan. Eaton Theater is incredibly grateful for their generosity and support. Please join us in welcoming and thanking Mr. Jeff Harris and Sunbelt Reynolds as a proud Adopt a School partner. Lastly, we'd like to ask Hatfield Elementary Principal Jim Mailer to please join us up front. Joining us tonight is the leadership team from the DFW Marriott Hotel and Golf Club, J.D. Martin and Megan Coy. As official partners, the Marriott leadership team has provided items for staff appreciation, organized a supply drive for classrooms, sponsored items for the Hatfield Beautification Project, and donated prizes for the PTA's Fall Festival. It should also be noted that the DFW Marriott Hotel is also a title sponsor for the NISD Education Foundation. We'd like to thank and welcome the DFW Marriott Hotel and Golf Club as a proud NISD Adopt a School partner. And that's it for Partners in Education. Emily?
All right. Each year, our finance department holds a contest for artwork for the cover of the NISD budget manual, and you can see that on your screens now. And so this year, we have our winner with us, so I'd also like to invite our Deputy Superintendent for Business and Operations, John Graswich, to the front. And our winner is a junior at Northwest High School. Her name is Autumn Kajzevich. I hope I said that correctly. Kajzevich. Come on to the front. She is a junior, and she's in the creative media productions, and she is doing graphic design there.
Great job. Proud of you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, next I'd like to invite the following people to the front. We have Executive Director of College and Career Readiness and Innovation, Celine Broswell. Our STEM Coordinator, Casey Helmick. We have students Marla Erica Gamboa and Hewlin Howard. And then also representing BNSF, we have Craig Rasmussen. BNSF has offered to donate $5,000 for the upcoming EDD Presents, which is an engineering design and development capstone reveal for Academy seniors. This event's going to be taking place on May 3rd. Okay, next I would also like, if Celine could stay up there, I'd also like to invite our Director of College and Career Readiness, Bobby Morris, to the front. And if we have anyone from the Education Foundation, I think we have Alyssa Edstrom, our Community Relations Specialist. The Northwest ISD Education Foundation is donating $4,000 to the CTE Culinary Arts Academy to provide financial support for students who are completing entry-level culinary certificates as part of their work in high schools. These funds will help the CTE department alleviate the tuition cost through El Centro College and allow students to earn college credit from an accredited college. All right, and in February is Career and Technical Education Month, so our CTE students wanted to thank our school board with this short minute-and-a-half clip. So direct your attention to the screen. We have CTE ambassadors explaining what makes their opportunities unique in Northwest ISD.
If you want a competitive advantage against thousands of high school students, join CTE.
The CTE program is all about discovering what is right for each individual student. The Northwest CTE program relates to the gaining of a competitive advantage that will help in guiding students to success and providing them with the resources to a bright future.
CTE has given me a competitive advantage because I've been able to explore different engineering fields that will help me understand which college I want to go to.
Career and technical education provides students of all ages with the academic and technical skills, knowledge, and training necessary to succeed in future careers.
Being in the Academy has set me apart and proved to be an enriching experience that has prepared me for professional and academic life.
At Northwest ISD CTE, we believe every student should get real academics, real skills, and a real high school experience unlike any other.
CTE courses are an integral part of a well-rounded education.
Career and technical education has helped me find my career. What's yours?
And that video was produced by the CMP students. So our last recognition this evening, I'd like to ask for our Chief Technology Officer, Adam Fine, Director of Instructional Technology, Kara Carter, and then our Coordinator of Instructional Technology, Jason Sanders, to come to the front. Mr. Sanders has been named by the Texas Computer Education Association the Technology Administrator of the Year. He received this for exhibiting exemplary vision and management of technology at the district level. Congratulations. And that's it.
And for all of our guests, you are absolutely invited to stay for the whole meeting, but if you'd like to excuse yourselves, we understand that too.
Okay, our next item is public participation, and I believe there are none.
Good. Okay.
So we'll move on to consent agenda. Board.
Madam President,
Mr. Sluter.
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Sluter and a second by Dr. Roush. Any discussion needed? All those in favor? Carries 6-0. All right, under discussion action, our first one is the annual review, Northwest ISD beliefs, vision, mission, and strategic goals. Dr. Warren?
Board, this information starts on page 16, and as we stated last year, we think the committee that Dr. Thornhill led for such a long time last spring did a phenomenal job coming up with our next strategic framework. Your core beliefs, the vision, the mission, strategic goals just fall right in line and just help guide us into everything that we're doing. I have heard from no no board, Mrs. Kopp, I've heard from no board member that any changes are needed, so I would recommend approval.
Yeah, Madam President.
Mr. Sproles?
I move to approve Northwest ISD's 2018 through 2022 strategic framework beliefs, vision, mission, and strategic goals as recommended by the administration.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Sproles, a second by Dr. Simpson. Is there any questions or discussion needed? All those in favor? Carries 6-0. Okay, our next item is the utility easement for Lance Thompson Elementary School. Dr. Warren?
Board, we would like Lance Thompson Elementary School to have utilities. I would recommend approval.
Madam President,
Mr. Sluter?
I must say, love utility easements. I move to approve settlement agreement and provide authority. Oh, wrong one.
Nope, wrong one.
Let's see, I've already messed up. Got me all
You
excited.
got so excited about the utility easement.
Okay, I move to approve the easement for Lance Thompson Elementary School site to allow utility support.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Sluter, a second by Mr. Hastings. Any discussion needed?
I just want to say I love utility easements.
Okay.
For the record.
I got that down. All those in favor? Carries 6-0.
Dr. Simpson, you're really going to have to keep that side of the...
Okay, our next item is the agreement of compromise settlement and release for drainage and landscape adjustments at the Outdoor Learning Center. Dr. Warren.
All right, Board, these next two items have been a long time in coming, and we appreciate your patience in doing this, but tonight we're going to ask you to vote on both of the items to get our Outdoor Learning Center complete as it needs to be. The breakdown of the agreement, all that information is in your packet. Mr. McClure, comments?
Yes.
And I do know we have at least one question. So
Sure. I was just going to say that this has been an ongoing resolve between us and architects and engineers that has gone over the course of multiple months of conversation and negotiation. There's a lot of information, especially in the attachment C, that breaks down the cost. There's shared costs on certain items. There's ownership of certain items, and it's all there. I know it's a lot of information to take in, but I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. McClure, I just want to understand, well, I guess a little bit more about Phase 3, and then what would be the actual cost for paving the road versus maintaining the road? So those are my questions, just a little more about Phase 3 and then actual cost difference.
Absolutely. So one of the big portions of that work that was designed was to be as naturalistic as possible. That was the goal previously set out when that project was realized and when it was starting to be constructed. So the outcome of Phase 3 is truly we had some drainage issues with some of that naturalist look of the site. We had some drainage issues based on some imperfections in the design, both in the building as well as the site drainage and utilities. So the building portion is already being taken care of. That didn't even come to light of day with you all because our architect at the time, or the architect of the project, Stantec, stepped up and owned that piece of it and went ahead and started that work with the contractor on their own. This portion really handles the civil and landscaping portions that had some failure, and then there's some key elements in there that we've added to it. The bulk of our cost of that $524,000 that you see that we're asking for from the NISD's portion, $250,000 of that is to improve the road that goes from the Great Hall down to the large pavilion. Again, going back to the design parameters that were given to the team at the time of conception, that road was meant to be as naturalistic as possible. We've realized over the course of 2 years out there, as well as just knowing what it takes to maintain a gravel road, especially one that's on a major slope going down the hill, that there's some annual maintenance costs that we're going to incur to do that. We asked for the civil group to propose a solution that would better improve those where we don't have to clean out those drainage ditches, recompact that road year after year and spend dollars on that maintenance. We did not, however, ask them what it would cost to pave it. I'll be happy to get that information for you and get it back. I know it would be a lot more than the $250,000 that we're going to do, or that we're asking to do, to alleviate the annual cost of cleaning out the drainage and recompacting the road and reforming the road if we had to do that on a year-to-year basis. But I do not have a number. We did not ask because that was going to be so much more that we didn't think that was something that was achievable.
So tell me a little bit about what we are doing then.
So what we are doing is we're putting a series of check dams in. We're going back in. We're cleaning out the drainage ditches on both sides that have basically filled up with silt. That removal of that silt over the course of time annually would be a responsibility, a maintenance responsibility on our part to make sure we're going in and keeping those drainage ditches clear of silt so that that doesn't compromise the erosion of the water as it comes across the land. So cleaning out those drainage ditches, putting several series of check dams in place that are slowing that water down and helping to reduce that amount of silt that's coming into that, and then the recompacting of that road what it is today.
So then the road would stay in a natural type condition.
It would stay in a natural type condition and stay there in a more permanent fix without an annual cost. What we've estimated in working with our civil engineers could be anywhere between $35,000 and $50,000 annually. Obviously, that depends on the amount of rainfall we get annually, but that's the cost we're trying to alleviate by making this fix.
Thank you. That's exactly what I needed to know.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Ms. Scott.
Okay.
On page number 7 of the agreement, item number 19, it says Northwest discharges those that are associated with this and their respective agents for claims based on what we've come up with thus far. So does that preclude them if we have another maintenance issue with what's been put down that we can't go back and ask for some assistance with those?
I'm going to defer to legal counsel for that response.
All right, so we're not releasing future damage. We're not releasing damage that we are not aware of yet. So we are only releasing them from liability for things that they are fixing now that we are aware of now. So if there's a problem with what they're fixing, we can still take action against them later on.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Board, I'd recommend approval.
Madam President, I move to approve settlement agreement and provide authority to the superintendent or his designee to execute. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dr. Simpson, a second by Dr. Roush. All those in favor? Carries 6-0.
Thank you, Board.
The second part of this is the CSP number B018-019-10-10-006. CSP for Phase 3, work at the Outdoor Learning Center, Drainage and Landscape. Dr. Warren?
And Mr. McClure, any other comments on this?
No, this is just the single bid we received on the work by the contractor that actually performed the work, North Star, originally out there, and so it was the only bid we received. We vetted those prices, and we've worked in tandem with them, both in the agreement and seeing the prices that you saw in the last agenda item as to the bids that were submitted.
Board, I'd recommend approval.
Madam President,
Mr. Sluter?
I move to award CSP number B018-019-010-006 to North Star Builders Group, LLC, for Phase 3 work at the Outdoor Learning Center, and to authorizing the superintendent or his designee to enter into contracts.
I have a motion by Mr. Sluter, a second by Mr. Sproles. Any other discussion before we vote? All those in favor? Carries 6-0.
Thank you, Board. Very good work on this. Christy, very good work on this. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a discussion item about the attendance boundary adjustments. Dr. Warren?
And team, just to give you a heads up, Dr. Cayley, after Tim gets through talking about the boundary adjustments, let's go right into the budget process. I believe our president thinks that'll be a great segue because we're talking about staffing. So let's do the budget process update right after Tim gets done with his attendance zone, please. Mr. McClure, please.
Yes. Okay, Board, I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the process we've gone through this year. It did endure some changes, I think, for the better as we move through a kind of revised process from what we've done in the past with identifying attendance boundaries and when we need to make those changes. Just to kind of bring you up to speed, I know you've heard me present before on this topic, but I just want to kind of recapture where we've been. Of course, the committee consisted of a campus administrator and a PTA representative from every district campus. We made those invitations. We also included parents that in the groups, we worked with the schools that would have been affected with the proposed changes based on what we received and worked with Templeton demographics on, and identified the pockets of houses that we have kids in those pockets, and we extended invitations to those parents as well, living in those areas to be a part of that committee process. So a total committee invitations that were sent out were 85 to be on the committee. In addition, we invited 17 district level administrators to serve as resources. So if there was any sort of questions throughout the process that needed to be answered by a district level administration, we had those folks in the room as well. And of course, we opened it up to visitors as well to attend. You can see there in the bottom the meeting dates and the total attendance, and broken down by those three segments of population: committee members, admin, and visitors. You can see the meeting attendance from 73 for the first meeting down to 40 for the last meeting. We also conducted a Facebook Live event. Last time I checked, it was over 4,700 views. I know it's probably grown a little bit since then. 36 comments. Thanks to Emily and the communications department for helping respond to all those comments. I believe we've wrapped up all those and have not received any recently during that process. As a part of that process, attendance boundary committee process, these are the things we try to cover when we get into that stage. We certainly talk about the future projections and statistics of the district, make sure everybody understands that. It can be overwhelming when you kind of live in your pocket and you don't know what's going on in the rest of our district. So there's some eye-opening experiences for those on that committee who maybe don't know much about the north end or the south end or the east end or the west end. So it's important to share that with them. We review our internal strategies of what we're trying to maintain through this process, and that's the student-teacher ratios, prevent campus overcrowding, improve the efficiencies of our schools, and minimize the impact of future changes. Those are just our internal goals. We obviously engage the community. We ask those committee members that are in that portion of those areas that are being proposed to be a mouthpiece to their neighborhood and to their community to help bring back that feedback. Sometimes they bring back people with them. A lot of times they're bringing back feedback from their neighborhood Facebooks or their discussions that they've had, whether that be at school events or Little League events or church events. We've asked them to do that outreach to help us have a mouthpiece for those segments of population. Of course, this year we introduced the Thought Exchange. I've given you the stats on that, and we'll go over that here in just a second too. Another great tool that opened that up to whoever. And one of the things I was really excited to see is we did have about 6% of students respond to that. So that was interesting to see that the students actually got on the Thought Exchange and were giving us thoughts on what were the most important factors to consider when going through boundary changes. And then the Facebook Live event that we've previously mentioned. Ultimately, the goal is to reach a consensus on a recommendation and bring to you, and that's what I have the pleasure of doing tonight, is telling you that we did reach a unanimous consensus from the committee to bring this recommendation to you, and then, of course, the duty for you to consider that recommendation between now and next board meeting. So here's a timeline on where we are. You can see right there we're at the end of February. We're bringing that committee to you, or that recommendation from the committee to you. Just a real quick overview. I know you know this information. This is just kind of the slide we showed about the growth that's going on in our district. Those pockets of green squares is where all those housing developments are happening. Of course, the arterial lanes, transportation lanes that we have struggles with, and then the stars of our campuses and the bigger stars for future campuses will be. We talked to them about it being, my analogy this year is it's a chess game. We try to stay in a game of chess. You want to stay 3 or 4 moves ahead of your opponent, and that's what we're trying to do. Our challenge in our district is that our board looks a little different than a standard chess board, and we have pieces that we're not really sure who they belong to. And when those pieces show up, in fact, ironically enough, I couldn't have written it better. We actually had a development come online, actually had 2 during the course of our meetings. So further emphasize my point. In fact, one of our committee members actually brought one of the communities to us. Now, it was a smaller community, but he said, hey, did you know about this one over here? And unbeknownst to me and Templeton, was not on our radar yet. And so we took that data in. So very interesting that actually happened during the course of the meetings, both twice. Methodology, this is from Templeton. This is all the data that they use that goes into their enrollment projections that you see every quarter. And Templeton was there at every meeting to help talk through those processes and answer any questions they have, as well as talk through the processes that we've gone through in planning to present the options for the boundaries. So went through all those different levels of projection, how they gather and do their projections. Of course, we went through the thought exchange. The thought exchange ran for about 10 days, over 1,700 participants, over 1,200 thoughts provided, and over 44,000 rankings. You can see the breakdown there of the participation based on categories, how they participated. The top thoughts that we saw, if you take the top 20, we then also extrapolated that to the top 100 ideas, and we got a very similar weighting of these items. But initially, the top 20, there's the top thoughts that were being rated. The distance was one of the highest at 8.3. Class size right behind that, 5.3. Then paying attention to growth at 4.3, and then safety and grandfathering at 1 each out of those top 20 thoughts that received the highest ratings. Ultimately, we said let's talk about how that aligns with what we set out to do as a committee. Of course, we know our top 2 priorities that no one ever wavers against on the committee is that we're here to provide an education and we're here to keep students safe. That's any school district should be their top 2 priorities, 1A and 1B. And then we took the thought exchange considerations and say, do they kind of match up with what we're trying to do? And I think they did. They did very well. I think try to match up, the top 5 matched up with what our internal strategies are. And so the committee took all that and ultimately got to the following recommendation. I'll walk you through it. We'll start at the high school level and work our way down. You see the map there with the areas circled. This was one that was somewhat of a no-brainer for the committee because this is a development that's just starting to turn dirt over next to Sendera Ranch. This development is split between current boundary lines at all 3 grade levels, meaning if this residential development, when it's completed, if it stayed the way it was today, you would have neighbors in one development going to different school systems. The majority, it's a slight majority, but the majority of the homes fall to the southern side. And actually, when we get to the planning numbers, I'll tell you a little bit about why you don't see much change in the planning numbers, but most of those planning numbers are front-loaded to the part of the phasing that should be coming in first, which is the southern side. So we talked about taking the northern portion of that development and bringing it into the southern portion boundary at all 3 levels. If we look at that portion as we zoom in a little bit and look at the changes, you won't really see any significant changes. And the major reason for that is that's a 2,300 home development, 2,300 home development. Their build-out is not 10 years. Their build-out is longer than 10 years. And their first phases, at least as we've started projecting and as Templeton has worked with the builder at this point, the developer, those first numbers are in the southern portion of that boundary change. So that's why you see those numbers staying basically the same, is because the northern numbers are further out than 10 years. And majority of those numbers are actually in the southern portion. So not much change there. This was simply a move to address any changes in the future and trying to get that development and that residential community aligned to one like boundary. Do you have any questions over the high school piece? We can take each one, or I can wait till the end, whatever you would like. Okay? Feel free to interrupt me at any point. Okay, middle school boundaries. Again, I wanted to show this because this is a key factor in why we were looking at Pike and the developments of Pike. Those 8 developments that you see that have 7 of them holistically in Pike and 1 of them partially in Pike feeder make up for 13,300 future homes. there's a lot of homes. That's obviously more homes and more students than Pike can endure. Now, all those are in different phases. There are a few of them that are actually putting houses on the ground right now. There are several of them that are moving dirt right now, and we expect to see the results of those houses in the next few years. So our concern was with especially the Pecan Square, Harvest, Canyon Falls, Timberbrook, excuse me. That's the 4 up in the northern quadrant there. Especially with those kind of being in a portion of the district where we have no other options to send them to yet at this point. We do have a middle school site up there, and one day we will have to construct a middle school site up there. Those housing developments are producing right now, or are very close to producing residents and homes. And so the concern then focused, well, what about the ones that are further down? And obviously the one that's split between Chisholm and Pike makes some sense there. And so we keyed in on these areas down here, again, with these developments that do not have homes on the ground yet. Could we make some changes, or should we recommend some changes to alleviate a future overcrowding at Pike and to help fill Chisholm, which is a little under right now? So there's the recommended changes that we worked through. Of course, you see in the smaller circle, that same area that I just talked about, that's the North Star development, moving that from Chisholm to Wilson. Again, you won't see much change in those numbers there. We'll kind of zoom into this piece here. You can see the numbers and the changes. You don't see a lot of changes in those areas, especially from the Wilson to Chisholm. You do see an increase at Chisholm from the Pike to Chisholm. So when you see that increase, a slight increase and tick up from Wilson to, from Pike to Chisholm, that's for that move, not the Wilson taken away, because again, most of those numbers were planned for the next 10 years in that southern portion of Wilson already. So there wasn't anything that came off of Chisholm in the next 10 years. Yes, sir.
So the purple, the section, the big circle there.
Yes.
That's going to go to Chisholm. So there's, looking at the numbers, there's not a whole lot being built there now. It's just that the plan is.
Yeah, and let me address that a little bit, because you'll see some discrepancies as we move forward. The software that is used for this part of the planning is separate than the software that's used for the projections that you get. So what happens is Templeton has kind of a sandlot of software they play with over here while we're working through projections, and then once we get your approval, we bring that realistically over to the projection software. Some of those numbers in the sandlot are not fully loaded because they don't have the projections of that development as aggressive as what we think they're going to do. So when you drive by the 114 development out here and you start to see the lots being segregated and the streets about to be poured, they've planned that at a very conservative number. So we, including Templeton, both feel that that number is going to go up once the houses show up. And we feel that those are going to actually go up, accelerate than what we show today. A lot of that's just future forecasts, because that development is set there for year after year after year and nothing's moved on it. So they kind of slow play it at first until they start seeing them roll out houses, and then they can get true quarter numbers by houses and start to adapt their projections from year to year to year as those homes are built and occupied.
Okay. And then also too with this large circle, when I was looking at, when you were collecting the thoughts, I got on there and looked, but the one that stuck out to me was the distance to schools. So someone asked, why can't I go to the school that's closer to me?
Yeah.
And then you see this big circle, there's Wilson's just right there, but then you got to take a long bus drive to get to Chisholm. So I'm just kind of curious. Can you just talk more about that?
Sure, absolutely. And it was a discussion we had during the committee process. Unfortunately, we don't grow equivalently across the district, and so you would want to grow from your center of your schools outward in every situation, and that's just not physically possible. So distance, while is a key factor, doesn't always rule out, because if you only adhere to distance, then you may overcrowd, and in this situation would overcrowd the other schools more immediately than what you would by making a move and have someone drive a little bit further to the Chisholm area. I think the bigger question, or not bigger question, but the bigger response from the committee was the fact that those people would know where they're going upon purchasing their house. They're coming into a development where they already know they're going to Chisholm and they're not being relocated today, which made that conversation a little bit easier. Okay. Moving on.
Wait, I have a question. Why did the projected numbers go up and down for Chisholm?
And you'll see that when we get to the next fourth quarter report, because we've started to already do some of that, especially to help out Kim as they're trying to plan for the next year's teachers. That deals with cohorts, and as a cohort class moves through, you have a bubble of students like in a particular grade, and so it will spike and then it'll come back down. And so what we've done and what I've worked with Templeton on is to try to make sure we equalize that a little bit better, especially since we are a little bit conservative on the numbers that we're looking at coming out of that development next door, the Trails of Elizabeth Creek, that D.R. Horton development, is to try to equalize that a little bit better because we know we're getting new residents, and so those cohorts are going to change year after year as you see those class sizes bubbles kind of change. But that's why you get that ebb and flow a little bit as you see that progressing. Okay, moving to the elementary. Again, the big circle is really the driver in this conversation, which is the opening of Lance Thompson Elementary School. The smaller circle at the bottom, of course, follows the same logic and line that the middle school and high school did for that feeder going into Haslett. And then that one in the middle, the more round versus oblong circle, is the community that currently lives there today, the students that live there today and attend Hatfield. And the conversation there as we move forward was that would be a good breaking point, since they would be, those students in their middle school level would be going to Chisholm, that it made more sense from the parents that were representative to keep their elementary grade and middle school siblings side by side than driving two different directions from a perspective of trying to attend their both elementary and middle school siblings events as they move up through the course of their grade levels. So that's where that's a little bit less. You say, well, one of the discussions was why not take the big piece like we did with the middle school. We took a much bigger swath at the middle school level. The key factor there is we're going to have an elementary school in that area, either in Trails of Elizabeth Creek or in the one going right across the highway that you're not seeing dirt move yet, but they're working on bringing water lines to. We're going to need an elementary school in there because Hatfield is our smallest school, and so that is one that you're going to see an elementary school pop up in that area sooner rather than later. And so to move them once for a few years until this next elementary comes into play and then move them back, the committee felt that was not doing those new residents that would be coming into that area justice to flip-flop them back and forth. And we thought we could just wait until we're ready to plant that new elementary school, relieve Hatfield, and support those developments that are coming in on both the north and south side of 114. And then moving up to Justin and North Lake area, we looked at several different options. The committee was really good at talking through this process. At one point, we had the boundary line along 156, and everything east of 156 was going to Lance Thompson, and everything west of 156 stayed in Justin. But the more we heard back from that community that's literally on the east side of the tracks there in downtown Justin, they're Justin residents, and they felt like that's where they needed to be, was the Justin Elementary School. They're not North Lake residents. And I know as a district of many municipalities, we don't follow those boundary lines. But in this case, the numbers were not large enough to make a huge impact either way. It probably shorted Justin, as Justin continues to grow, it probably shorted them maybe a half a year from going over their point. So it's 30 kids spread out over the 5 grade levels. So the committee felt like that was an appropriate measure, was to say let them stay at Justin and take that boundary line just beyond that development there and really focus towards the North Lake community. The other piece of that was knowing the growth that's coming in North Lake with both Pecan Square and with Harvest. They did ask the question, we went through the exercise of if Lance Thompson starts to get too big, who's the first one you're going to take off of that group? And it was that same segment. We would move them back to Justin. So he said, let's not flip-flop them if we know that would be the inevitable move once Lance Thompson starts to reach capacity, is to peel them back to Justin. Let's just leave them at Justin, and that's why the boundary you see there is the way it is. The other piece of that boundary is the portion on the east side of 35, which currently feeds Roanoke Elementary, which is the majority of those students are coming out of Canyon Falls development. Canyon Falls and that whole portion on the east side of 35 currently already feeds to Pike and feeds to Northwest. And so by bringing that into Lance, it gives them a pure feeder. They're staying with the students that they attend elementary school on to the middle school and ultimately on to high school, whereas right now they split off of Roanoke. Roanoke goes to Medlin and Byron, and then they peel over and go to Pike and Northwest. So they like that being a truer feeder pattern for those kids there. And looking at the numbers, if we zoom in, you'll see obviously the relief to both Justin and Roanoke. Both of them were reaching capacities in the next year or two. And so a lot of growth going up. You continue to see Justin start to rebound. You see Roanoke kind of level off, and we think that's very accurate for now. We don't expect, there's not a lot of developments today in Roanoke that are showing us for futures. That doesn't mean that couldn't happen tomorrow or next week or next year. But currently we feel like that makes a Roanoke feeder that's pretty accurate to the capacity of their campus. And then you see the Justin feeder start to rebound. That's really due in part to that that development just north of town, the Timberbrook development. It's roughly about 1,200 homes. In that development, they've reached out to us about an elementary school site, and that would ultimately need to happen at some point. If you think of housing developments, about every 1,500 homes is our key mark for where we need an elementary school. So when a developer's coming in with 1,200, you say, well, that's really the low end we'd consider. But given that they're coming into a zone that's already reaching capacity, that's going to put them over at some point, and we'll need an additional elementary school up there.
On the Lance Elementary, I was thinking that number was a little bit low. The 271 is...
It is. It absolutely is. And again, that goes back to that sandlot discussion. These projections are happening in a different software than what we keep the pure projections on. And that 271 actually doesn't include the pre-K numbers, and it is a very conservative number towards the kindergarten, because kindergarten you just don't know. Everybody else we have geocoded, so we know what they're going to do year to year to year as they move grade to grade to grade. So that actually is a low number. We've been vetting that with Templeton, really hedging our bets. I mean, you guys are going to make a decision, and so we've already started that process of looking at that because Kim needed those numbers to help start to plan, and you're going to see that information here in just a minute. We really feel that number probably opens at the school probably around 322 to 340. I think it could be even up towards 350. Templeton's kind of holding me back and saying it's like 320, 22. But I think we're going to see a very similar pattern, and they agree with me on this, to what we see at Curtis, which Curtis has just the minute that they hit the ground. Kim could give me the better stats on what Curtis has grown by this year, but five teachers just since we opened. And I feel you're going to get the same response in this development, especially because once this opens, you're going to have Pecan Square starting to turn houses very shortly after that. And so we feel that number's probably 325 to 350, and then I imagine it'll grow past 400 before we get through the first school year. And remember these numbers, just as a reminder, I know you probably all know this in the back of your head, these numbers are all at that projected PIMS date, that October date is that snapshot date. So this is not to say this is where we start the year or end the year. This is simply that snapshot in October is what this number is targeting. So you think of that as an October number and it continuing to grow throughout the year.
So, Mr. McClure, one of the questions that I have is, because we talked about efficiency, at what point does the size of enrollment really impact the efficiency of the school? And because I know we've said 850, and this number is significantly less than that,
yes, it is,
with several years out before it actually even gets close. And so it seems to me like there's a bit of cost here run a school efficiently, and so I'm concerned about how we project when we open a school. Are we opening it efficiently so that we're maximizing the expenditures of staff?
Sure. Very good question. I think there's a lot that goes into that. The cost of the construction goes into that. The further you put it out, right now we're on about an 8 to 10% growth annually in construction costs. So every year you move that out, you're creating a cost. The burden you're putting on the campuses that are absorbing that overage. Does that mean we're bringing in portables and operating portables in an overoccupied campus scenario? Those both go into it. Ideally, from the numbers that I've traditionally ran, the numbers I deal with Templeton, you want to open at about half. I mean, that would be ideal. Is where you would like to be. If you could stretch that up to a little over half, that would be great. In this scenario, we just felt with Justin and all the growth that's going there and the impact to Justin Elementary School, one of our older buildings, we couldn't stand to withhold that. And to be honest, we actually thought our numbers would be higher at this point. So development slowed down a little bit longer. The Pecan Square deal was supposed to be done a little bit sooner than this, so we actually thought we would open at about 400. I still think we'll get there in that first year, but the half number is about where we'd like to operate.
That was kind of what I was thinking, that we'd open half, and so we are really under that, and so that means that we're going to staff with a principal and assistant principal when we have really low numbers. And so it's a concern to me that, because I would tend to agree with you that we'd want to open with about half.
Yeah.
So is there another picture that you looked at that would get us closer?
The only other picture was bringing in that 156 border. That would get us about 36 more kids closer, is what that was in that group. So you would go from that, 322 that we're at right now to up over 355 at the start of school or before October, and then again proceeding on to what I think we'll get to, which is the 400 by the end of that first school year. That's the only other option we looked at, to answer your question, is that group.
Could we look again to see if we might be able to kind of reach that target?
Happy to look at that again. It starts to be a little bit of a reaching segment because the population group outside of that core of Justin gets really low. So going along the northern boundary there in the district, you don't have the densities that you would need to really start to fill that. And since we're kind of in the corner of the district, there's only one way we can look, and that's to the south.
And I realize Pecan Square is dirt right now. I mean, it's still a long way away from having a house. So it seems like, just from an efficiency standpoint, we really, to operate the school well with the staffing that's been being recommended, we need more children. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know when Pecan Square will actually sell houses and have little ones or big ones. So. Sure.
I totally agree with you, Ann. I was at the meetings, or two of them, and I appreciate the fact that Tim and his team listened to the community that was being affected, and it's the Meadowlands, which they are in the city of Justin. So I was in agreement that was a good plan to let them still go to Justin. I think I'd like to see the numbers bigger too, but I think it's going to grow pretty fast. So I feel like we're going to get there after the first year anyway.
Well, and we have that. Again, the numbers you're seeing here, the 349 is not accurate because it didn't have the pre-K and the transfers. We know there's going to be teachers that are going to bring their kids there. The transfer number at Curtis, that's what we used to kind of rationalize that. The transfer number at Curtis was about 60 kids that transferred into Curtis. Most of those were staff members' kids, which we allow. So that next year number that you see there at 349 is not the actualized number because we're doing that work on the side, bringing it into the real-time data, and it is over 400 in that second year. So that's why I feel really confident in that first year. We'll probably get really close, if not going over to 400 in that first year. And I'll be happy to send those numbers to you so you can see the new numbers. We just got them literally today.
I think that would be really helpful because, as we talk about future bond, we need to be sure that we're opening our schools and utilizing them efficiently.
Absolutely.
And so it creates a concern, I think, when we come in with one school being significantly smaller, particularly when it's a school that has the capacity of 850.
Yep.
And I'll ask Kim this question. If we are that low when we open, could we do without an AP for a year just to save those funds? Or do we have to open with a principal?
We could do anything we wanted to on that. I'm not going to recommend that.
I do have a question for you, Mr. McClure.
Yes, sir.
From breaking ground to moving students in, how long does it take us to build an elementary school?
From breaking ground or from starting the design process?
Well, I assume that we're going to start the design process well before anticipation. Yeah. So breaking ground.
Breaking ground is about, we would like 13 to 14 months.
Okay, so some of these developments you'll see, they break ground, they've got houses, people living in them 12 months later.
That's
right?
correct.
So,
that's correct.
You almost have to have an educated guess, and you have to be under construction before they get there to find a place for them. So
that's a valid point. Yes, sir. All right, the last slide was basically the Attendance Boundary Committee recommendations as far as grandfathering goes. They stuck with the district standard, what the district has made a standard in the last several changes, or for as long as I know, which is if your student is planning on being in that school in their last grade level the next year, that they would be allowed to stay. They would not be provided transportation, and their siblings would still need to transfer to the other one, unless, of course, that sibling was a twin, and then going into that final year as well with them. So they stuck with those recommendations, and that is the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to go back and cover anything else that you would like to.
Good. All right, team, this is, of course, a discussion only tonight. You've got almost a month to look at this. We don't have another board meeting to just make the final agreement on that until the Monday after spring break. As Ann just requested, if anybody has any other things you want us to look at within that month, just call us, and we will pull whatever you'd like to. Tim has a great little thing that he can move lines and and just have fun doing it. So we'll look at anything that you'd like to. Good job, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move to reports, and we're going to move the budget process update report up to A. Dr. Warren?
Board, for our February budget update on our schedule, we have a campus growth positions for you to look at. We're going over some programming needs, and then I'm going to finish it with a legislative update. So, Kim, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Good evening, Dr. Warren, President Cobb, and board members. We're glad to be here. We'll follow up. A lot of the work happening in Mr. McClure's office directly impacts what we're doing, and so I can answer some additional questions of how we're preparing for the upcoming school year. As you know, everything that we do in our department directly supports the strategic goal number 2 for us to recruit and retain our exceptional staff. So that's everything that drives all the things that we work on in our office. So considerations as we are preparing for the upcoming school year. As you know, we are growing. We've discussed that this evening. We know we're opening Lance Thompson Elementary. We know that we've got proposed boundary changes, class size ratios we look at as well. Of course, aligning those to the approved campus staffing formulas. And we also look at priority needs across our school district at all levels. And then we always include contingency positions for when we do experience that growth, that we are prepared. And we have teachers teaching positions ready for those students. As he mentioned, we have received those updated numbers. And I would say, we're going to go through the plan tonight that we have based on the numbers that we had already. But we already anticipate that there will be some changes based on those updated numbers. And so staffing is one of those things that's fluid. And so there are times that it kind of ebbs and flows, and we've got to make those decisions based on where the students land, and we're prepared to do that as well. All right, elementary staffing. As you know, we are opening a school, so it takes quite a bit to get that off the ground. These are our positions that we need in the district based on opening that campus due to growth and then growth on other campuses as well. A couple of things to point out. That bilingual teacher is our last bilingual teacher in the district to make us have 2 full bilingual campuses at Prairie View and at Roanoke, so we're excited to have that. Those intervention specialists are based upon need on the staffing formula that you approved several weeks ago as well, and the rest are up there for growth. Let's take a look at secondary. We are growing in that area as well, so we'll need some classroom teachers to prepare for those students, as well as the growth at Eaton High School. We will need an assistant principal and principal, and of course we're adding student service facilitators to those middle school campuses. And then you may see the Principal Steele Accelerated High School up there. As you recall, last year we had Mr. Bobby Morris, who was here earlier tonight. He has been taking care of that campus this year, and we've identified a need to place a full-time principal there as well. So we are requesting that to happen. And then, of course, special education staffing. This is directly related to the opening of Lance Thompson Elementary. So this is what we'll need to get that campus started. Of course, those positions will share other campuses as well, the diagnostician and probably the speech pathologist as well, depending on student caseload. I'll also want to point out that we will have additional staffing in an update later this spring. We know that we'll need some staffing, additional staffing in the special education department, but a lot of our departments are still working and reviewing those and looking for approval at the district level before bringing that report to you guys. All right, across the district, we also look at the needs that we have. With an increased amount of students, it increases the amount of administrators and support that we need across the district and here at Central Admin as well. As you recall, we had TASB come in and do an audit of our central administration, and so some of those needs were identified through that audit, and so these are part of them. Here are 3 that we have for the upcoming school year. And then here are the numbers, looking at the total growth positions and then those that we would be reducing through attrition. Of course, our programming needs and then contingencies that we have for future growth throughout the year. Our total budget impact right now would be just under $7 million. But as I said, based on the newer numbers that we have from Mr. McClure's office, it's looking like we would be able to have several fewer teachers than what we have up here. So if we can do that, we certainly will. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
I'm not sure it's a question, but I think back in January when we looked at this staffing, we knew that we had some wish lists on that. And we did wish for them. I mean, we really wanted them. At the same time, we really are looking at a significant impact based on Chapter 41 and a reduction to our fund balance. And looking 4 years out in 2022, we're actually in the hole. And so, Mr. Grasswich, you told me we had a couple of options to work through if we were going to try to balance the budget. One is personnel and...
Essentially, budgets are built around revenues and expenditures. So if you have a shortfall, you either have to raise taxes or do a TRE, which we've discussed innumerable times. And as we talked about at the other meeting, when you asked, you have to reduce the budget, and the budget's primarily people, as I discussed with Steve Sproles.
So it concerns me greatly, particularly if we're opening a school that's small, but we're trying to staff it with the typical staff that we would have on a campus of 650. I just think we've got to really take this seriously. I know you all are working hard at it, but I think it's a serious issue because we do not know what will happen to recapture. We do not, and we are going into fund balance on the M&O side, and so it does concern me, and I would just ask that we be very conservative in what we're doing with staffing because it is a major part of the budget, and it's a little disconcerting right now. Not that we don't want to have all of these positions, and every one of them is so very important, but it's pretty risky right now.
Yes, of course, Dr. Simpson. We understand that and definitely echo your concerns with budgeting. That's why we rely heavily on numbers that we receive, the most updated numbers possible from our demographer, so that we are making these staffing decisions with the most accurate information, so that we don't have excess for a year or we don't have things that aren't allocated for us. We'd like to use the staff that we have as much as we can.
I think it's more than just being careful. I think we really have to start looking at positions that could be negotiated in some other way or some shared opportunities. So
sure, we'll be glad to look at that. Any other questions this evening?
I've got a couple of questions. It shows Justin losing 4 teachers, but really they're just going to Lance Thompson, right?
Yes, they would be reallocated across the district. Yes.
That's just, it's just a balance there.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And then what is the student service facilitator?
That is a position that
I wasn't here last year, so I can plead ignorance.
Yes, and we have those currently at our high schools, and we'll be bringing those into our middle schools as well to assist and provide support with the counselors.
They work with the 504 students, so they take quite a bit of the load off the counselors.
Any other questions, board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's get to something that we all love. Let's do our legislative update. There we go. Okay, where is it? Yama. That's all right. We still love you. It's supposed to be right there on it's the same report.
Oh, it's on the same report.
Yeah, it's just the next slide.
Sorry.
There we go. You got it?
Sorry. This one's too quick.
So is this the right one?
No, it's this one.
Y'all are killing me. Okay, still not the right one. This is what I need up right there.
It is the other one.
Okay, legislative update. This is the first slide you know. They have been to work almost 2 months now. Not a lot has been done. Pretty much not a lot of decisions made at all. Final decisions, of course. They did get good news at the beginning. Our comptroller came to them and said they were going to have about $120 billion to work with, which is an increase over the last biennium of about 8.1%. Most important thing the House had to do was to name a new speaker. Joe Strauss, a longtime speaker, retired from the House of Representatives. The legislators on the House side picked Speaker Bonin. Speaker Bonin is down like south. He's from a small community south of Houston. He's been in the legislature a long time, and he's got a lot of respect. And so he is now the Speaker of the House, and the 3 main leaders of the legislature of the state, Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and Speaker Bonin, all came out in support this legislative session of school finance and property taxes. In fact, Governor Abbott made them emergency items. So the first rattle out of the box that you know that the House came out with their needs for public ed, which was $7 billion. Senate not so much than 7, but an increase over the last time of $3.7 billion. The first thing they did, the 2 mirror bills were filed, SB2 and HB2 were filed for property tax reform. HB2 has not moved as fastly as SB2. Senate Bill 2 has actually already been voted out of, as of last week, has already been voted out of committee. I watched the hearing, that they had a 12-hour hearing on this. There were about 500 taxpayers who came up to the podium and told the senators they loved this idea. And then there were about 500 school board members and county commissioners and judges and city councilmen came up and said they hated the idea of Austin making the decision about the revenue that local governments could raise and not raise. So it's still an argument there. Senate Bill 2 was passed out of that. Now, the big news last week is we thought that this 2.5 was the hard cap that the governor wanted, the lieutenant governor wanted. Last week we heard they have no idea where that number is going to be. They just want it under 8. So that's all going to be a negotiation. Right now, the Senate doesn't even have enough votes to bring it to the floor for a vote. So they're doing a lot of negotiating behind the scenes to do the property tax, which is very much needed. I don't want to sound gripey about that. It is every time I speak about school finance, the number one thing I say is schools are not funded efficiently. But the second thing I talk about is it is very unfair for personal property owners to bear the brunt of public education, the cost of public education. So what they're going to do is very much needed. I just want them to do it in a way that will not tie our hands in the future because of our growth and the growth of Texas and the communities that we serve to be able to gain the funds that we need. So there's the emergency items that Governor indicated was going to be on the first list. That's what we're following right now. And one of the things that we're definitely talking to our teachers is about TRS. TRS is a really good system to retire under. It really is, as long as they don't mess anything up. They're still talking about pre-K, fully funded pre-K, which we absolutely agree with, and that's part of the NISD priorities. So it'll be very interesting as we go through this. Those are the 4 categories that I'm going to. I sent you out a pamphlet about 2 months ago. There's going to be a TASB legislative update tomorrow. Steve actually signed up for it, so Steve and I are going to be going to Austin tomorrow. We're going to spend the morning at the Sheridan listening to TASB and TASA give us the legislative updates, and then we're going to walk up the street, and then we're going to spend the afternoon actually meeting with our state leaders. We've got a couple of meetings already set up with our folks to talk about these priorities. If you will remember, we have one new, I just want to throw this up there to you just to remind you, if you've not reached out to Senator Fallon yet, he is brand new to us. He defeated Craig Estes in the District 30 Republican primary. So all other 7 are old-timers. They've been with us for a while, but Senator Fallon is new. And I met him last week when I went to Austin. Didn't get a lot of time with him, but I did meet him, and we were going to start trying to start a relationship. We're talking about to all of we had this discussion last week with our PTA reps about contacting the need for our parents to contact legislators, the need for all of our school leadership and our staff to contact leadership. And then here are just the maps according of where we are in the district of who represents who. Senator Hancock has a very little part there on the southeast side. Senator Nelson has a large part of our district, and then Senator Fallon has a large part of the west side of our district. There are the state reps. Tan Parker has a big part in the central and the east side, northeast side. And then Representative Capriglione that's one of the guys that Steve and I are going to go talk. We're going to talk to Gio tomorrow. Matt Krause has the south end. We have a little bit with Representative Guerin, and on the west side with Representative Phil King. Okay, so that was today. We had about 50 people come from NISD, and Reliant Busing provided a bus for them, and they went, and in fact, they should be rolling in here in just a little bit. So we had PTA members, parents, and students who went to the PTA rally today, and that's fantastic. Just a few for you to follow, and I know you've been doing so. Of course, just talking about Senate Bill 2, Betancourt. He is a senator from the Houston area. He is championing the 2.5% tax cap, and that has been voted out of the committee. Senate Bill 3 is our Senator Nelson's bill, and that is for the $5,000 teacher salaries. As of today, it was voted out of committee. They took the last bit of testimony this morning and voted it out of committee. So it'll start being discussed if they can bring it to the floor. Very interesting one that we're going to look at is by our own Charlie Guerin, HB 462. He is actually requesting a constitutional ballot be put on the next election or a future election that the state is mandated to pay for at least 50% of the total cost of public education. You know, they've fallen now to about 36%. At one time, they were at 62%, and now they've fallen that much. So he's actually proposing a ballot be put on a referendum be put on the ballot that would require the state to fund at least 50% of the total public education in the future. Representative Landgraf is actually, I know him from Odessa. He's a representative from Odessa. He actually filed a bill to take STAR out of the accountability system, not doing away with the test, but actually nullifying its results for the accountability ratings and using other locally adopted items for school accountability. I love that guy. A couple of more. Senator Betancourt talked about making some more training requirements on board members on House Senate Bill 280, and then Senator Seliger, who is a senator out of the Odessa area, 2 sessions ago he came up with the individual graduation committees, meaning seniors who had still lacked passing. They couldn't fail more than 2 in the course exams, but if they had only failed 1 or 2, we could actually name a committee here in the district, have them go through a committee system, and if they were deemed appropriate, could graduate without actually having to pass the intercourse exam, which just kind of took that high stakes off. And then we thought that was a very good bill. He signed that bill. He's filed this bill to make it permanent. What his bill was, it has to be renewed every legislature. This 213 would actually make that permanent into the Texas Education Code. So we are watching every day, whether we do it from our computers or we do it there in Austin. There are no bills out yet on the House side nor the Senate side on school finance. They're still working behind. We have, and you have a copy of the Finance Coalition's recommendations. That coalition that met for a year to look at the system. They made, what, John, 24 different recommendations? Maybe more than that?
Boy,
it was a lengthy report.
I think the key of that report, we have talked about that, was that the Finance Committee was really redirecting resources in many ways towards certain districts which went out point. To be honest, by setting up additional weights and population, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And then anything was left over, they put it in the basic allotment.
If you get a chance, and I know how busy you are, but if you get a chance, go to the Texas Tribune website, and Senator Larry Taylor, who is a senator out of the Houston area, he gave about an hour-long interview with the Tribune on just the school finance, and it's very educational about what at least the Senate is looking at. He realizes there's been some formulas that have not been updated since the 80s and 90s. He understands that we need more funds for that. So he also understands that Robin Hood is broken and that the state cannot continue to rely on Robin Hood to fund public education. So if you get a chance to do that, that's very educational. But I will keep you informed every step of the way once a bill has actually been filed. Because once a bill has been filed, the Legislative Budget Board will start their work, but then we have groups here in the state, especially Moat Casey, you've heard that organization several times. They will start doing district runs. They will start doing district analysis, and we will start being able to show you numbers if this bill passes, exactly how much more revenue that would provide us. What would the recapture be? What would that? So as soon as the work really truly gets done and filed and is out in public, we'll start feeding you those numbers very quickly.
Just a comment about Senate Bill 3 that Senator Nelson is sponsoring, and I guess it's now come out of committee, about teacher salary. And we didn't set that as a priority, but certainly it always is a priority. My understanding of this bill as it stands right now is that it's only for 2 years, and I wonder what we might do to communicate that it needs to have support ongoing and not just land it back in the district and after 2 years it vanishes.
And see, and that was, you and I talked about that today, and I don't think that was my understanding of the bill. I believe that if this bill gets passed, it is actually added to the permanent school fund and is included in the basic allotment.
Right.
So
the way I read it last week, it still said 2 years.
Okay. Okay. What she said, what Senator Nelson said in committee meeting was that it was her intent that this would not become an unfunded mandate. In fact, she is even taken off the mandate of us paying extra for TRS.
That's good news, because that wasn't the way it sat last week. And so I think that's important because it is misleading. It's significantly important to our teachers.
Absolutely.
But it could also be devastating 2 years from now.
Well, and that's the whole thing. The teachers desperately need to be paid more. We have absolutely no problem with that part of the bill, but there's two other issues I have. We've got 1,200 other staff members who are very important to our school district, to the success of our school district, who need to be taken care of as well. So that's going to be on us. And then secondly, there are more needs besides salaries in this school district. And if the Senate if they're going to say, okay, we're going to put $3.7 billion in, but they're going to take another $2 billion essentially out because that has to be dedicated to salaries, that means we're going to have less to pay for everything else that we need to do. So it's a political game. There's no telling what it's going to look like at the end of the session of what they're talking about now.
With the Senate Bill 3, I've heard chatter through Facebook pages. Is it going to be a true raise, or is it just getting paid more? And in other words, are they going to be required to work more days, or
no? In fact, Senator Taylor was asked that question by the gentleman from the Tribune, and he said it was the intent of the committee that $5,000 meant $5,000 to teachers, that we would not have any local control to reduce that, to do anything like that, but it would be $5,000. That was what he was hearing as a member of that committee, that was the intent. Right now, as it stands right now. All right. Thank you, Gordon.
I just want to have a comment, and I think you're right, because it's very specific that it's only teachers. Counselors, librarians, anyone else, interventionists, if they're not a classroom teacher, they will not get that $5,000
That is
raise.
correct. Only classroom teachers right now, and they're getting a lot of pushback right now because of that.
Okay, moving to our next report, District Effectiveness Report and Board Orientation Report from Communications. Dr. Warren?
Mrs. Conklin, please.
Yes.
Show us how efficient you are.
I will. Yeah. We'll skip this one since you know the vision. Yeah. So on the screen you'll see our department's vision and mission statement with an emphasis on engaging our community members, in addition to making sure all of our news and information is accurate and adaptable. This is a quick overview of our department and what our functions are. Of course, last year we added the Education Foundation and Marketing and Advertising to the department. I did want to point out as part of the board orientation that with media relations, anytime that you guys need help with media training, or if a reporter approaches you, you can always come to us and we can help you with that as well too. On the screen, and I'm not going to read all of these out because I'll go through them through the PowerPoint later, but this was our area of focus that we looked at for this year as part of our department's action plan. It also encompasses the Education Foundation. So looking at that very first one, we did a lot of discussion as to branding, and Northwest ISD really talking about what branding is and what that means. And so we're looking at measuring Northwest ISD's brand, and that can encompass, just the overall feeling of the district, the logo, perhaps maybe some changes there. So we've been doing a lot with that. We've also conducted a parent survey, and so we will have more information for you guys at the March 18th board meeting on that. But just a quick overview, it was mobile friendly this year, which is new, so we were hoping that that would give us some more responses. We had about 2,700 or so responses, and average response time was about 7 minutes, and then we also saved about $8,000 because the communications department and technology department worked together. So we'll be presenting all those results to you guys at the March 18th school board meeting. We've also been working on a crisis communication plan and then making sure all of our district administrators are trained on that. We know research shows that people don't necessarily remember what happened in the crisis, but they remember how people respond to a crisis. So with that communication plan, we've been getting a lot of feedback from district administrators. We've also been working with our safety team, and then everyone will be going through a mandatory training, all of our district leaders this summer. Oops, clicking too fast, sorry. Our marketing and advertising program, we've really begun to work with those three entities that you see on the screen, so Partners in Education, Education Foundation, and Marketing and Advertising. We had so many people throughout the past at least 11 years that I've been here going out asking for dollars through Partners in Ed at times and through the Education Foundation, so it really makes a lot of sense that this all is under one umbrella because they do work out in great partnerships. Through our marketing and advertising program, we did just start advertising on school buses, so that's going to be really interesting. We're also able to incorporate different district programs on the buses and the signage, so we'll be doing some CTE advertising. We're also going to advertise for tuition-based pre-K on the buses. We have ATM machines installed at some of the campuses, and that's a partnership with EECU Credit Union, and we don't have an ATM machine near here, so we worked with our facilities team to make sure, and that's been a real convenience to parents and families that are up here. And then we've also started with our marketing and advertising program, Trades and Service. So for example, you saw the Marriott here this evening getting recognized. They are what's called an anchor partner, and you'll see what that is on the screen, so an anchor partner. And in doing that, they have provided the Education Foundation a free venue to use for our gala for the next 3 years. So we can use that venue space for free. We can also use what their golf course for free as well, and then we've traded for advertising. So we, equaled out all of or totaled the amount of what that would cost for the space, and it equals an anchor partnership. So that's been really neat to do as well. So right now with advertising, we have 26 partners for the school year. That revenue to date has been updated now to closer to $80,000. And then there's a breakdown of just where all of that is going. Most of it is going to the facilities department because that's paying for that video board system that we have at the stadium. And then of course some costs on signage installation. But then one of the neat things about this is that campuses can get some money back in their campus through their e-newsletter banner ads and campus web banner ads. So the total value that the district will be bringing in over the multi-year agreements, which are anywhere from 3 to 5 years, is a little over $400,000. So that is going back into the general fund. So those are the big partners that we have right now. You've probably already seen some of those banners at the stadium. And then of course we're implementing the bus banner ads too. So through Partners in Education, we have 22 total Adopt a School partners and 8 that have come on this year. We're already a little over 83,000 in volunteer hours. And then our Angel Tree served almost a record number this year. I think this was our second highest year of Angel served, so just under 1,000. And that's a great partnership that we have with the Council of PTAs. And then we're still in prep for Back to School Fair. I believe we're working on setting a date for that now. I think it's the 3rd Saturday in August, but we're able to use Shears of Steel, for example, to provide haircuts, and they did a record number of haircuts this year. So on your screen, you'll see a chart that has all of the Wise County partnerships. That's a really big focus that we looked at this year, and there's not as many businesses out in that area, but you'll see what partners are out there working with which campus and then the different initiative that they're taking on. So they may be donating money or just food or volunteering at events. We've also joined the Wise County Chamber. We're very involved in that, and Dr. Warren's actually a board member for them. And then we're even hosting an event at Chisholm Middle School in September, a networking event. So Matrice is really excited about that over at Chisholm Middle. Another initiative that we wanted to do was take Northwest Reads into the secondary level, and even having maybe some of our secondary students working with our elementary students virtually. So this year we're going to start a pilot program where one of our secondary classes is reading to one of the elementary classes via Skype. So we're looking at that as well. So that's Friday, April 26th. So save the date if you're interested in reading with us. That's going to be from 9 to 10 o'clock at the elementary schools. And we will have a sign-up link available after spring break. This is a look at the Education Foundation, just some of the successes that we've seen. We gave out about $88,000 this year in innovative teaching grants and raised about $75,000 at our golf tournament. And of course, the bulk of that goes toward student scholarships, which we are right in the midst of. North Texas Giving Day, we participated in that this year and made a little over $8,000. These are each of the goals that the Education Foundation has, the strategic goals that guide us. We really have been focusing on improving the infrastructure with the Education Foundation, and then of course focusing on ways to support the vision of the school district to help guide our funding priorities. So a couple things going on with the Education Foundation that are new is we did start an advisory board this year. We have about 15 members that are made up of teachers, we have some principals, we have some district administration staff, community members, former board members, and that has been very helpful. We will meet with them twice a year. And then we've been working on policies in place. So we have a records retention, whistleblower, and conflict of interest. So we're working on getting some other procedural type things done as well. And then we're planning for future staffing because you've seen as our district is growing, so is the Education Foundation as well. And so we will be hiring a secretary for the 1920 school year. So that will be funded by the Education Foundation. And then, of course, we have future planning going on right now. So we talked about school finance. We're doing a lot of education pieces with that. So we have a video that's been done that really gets down to the quick facts about what school funding is and where the dollars are going. We participate and coordinate the groundbreaking ceremony, so we'll be working on the natatorium one that's coming up as well. And then we had 2 building dedications this year and planning for more. Staff recognition events, we have Inspire that's coming up on April 11th, and so we have about 700 staff members that come to that, so recognizing retirees and employees of the year, so our department coordinates that as well. We are getting ready for scholarship presentations. In fact, we have 150 or so that have applied so far for a scholarship from the Education Foundation, which is a record number since I've been here. So I think the scholarship application window closes on April 1st, so we should have a lot more. And then, of course, the Education Foundation Gala is coming up on May 4th, and so it's the 20th anniversary for the Education Foundation, so we're doing a Roaring 20s theme this year, so very excited about that. And then, of course, Convocation, we're already starting to prep for that. In fact, we have meetings this week to start talking about that. So any questions? Try to go fast.
First, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Sure. One question that I have is when we looked at marketing and advertising, what would be a range that we might see school districts of what they generate? Would we have any idea what would be high or low? Or
we've looked at that, and one of the districts we looked at was Katy. They're bringing in a lot at Katy IC, but they're also much bigger than we are. We're very comparable to other districts around us, so I would say about the same.
Good job, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next report is the January Financial Investment Report. Dr. Warren.
Mr. Greswich.
Now, following up on the earlier presentation, there were 35 recommendations in the report, and the one on the adjusted basic allotment was fairly vague. It was like, if we have anything left over, you should raise the basic allotment. And the only reason I want to address that is the basic allotment is the heart of the school finance system. It's what you basically are living on for anybody who's not a special student, for most of your students. And in fiscal year 2014, the basic allotment was $4,950 or thereabouts. And now it is sitting $200 higher, which is about 3.8% increase over those years. To keep up with just inflation, it should have been increased by 10%. And so that works out to, say, about an extra $295 per weighted average daily attendance. Okay, that's not a lot of money, is it? Well, when you have, in our district, over 27,000 WADA, weighted average daily attendance, that works out to over $8 million in our case. So through inflation slippage, we're underfunded just in that one area by over $8 million. And of course, we know it's with all the extra stuff that's been pushed down the pike, that's just the first drop in the bucket. So anyway, to the January financial report. Here we go. We've been letting a lot of investments just mature and not be reinvested because there's almost no reason to do it, to be honest. The yield curve is all but flat. It goes up about 0.1% if you put out for a year at this point. And so we've just let it be, the money is sliding into the tax pool and being spent on various things. We had four securities, mature, $1 million in the activity fund, $7.5 million in capital projects, and then we had $10.5 million in securities mature into the interest and sinking fund, and we made our bond indebtedness payments on in February 14th. We have about $289 million invested at the end of the month of January, and we were earning just shy of 2.4%. It is spread out amongst different kinds of portfolio types. We have everything on a fairly, as they say, we're just letting it slide in. So our longest investments don't go out past 6 months anymore. If we see some kind of an uptick in the market, we, of course, will immediately go out and ladder out our investments, but there's no point to ladder them out when there's no return to speak of. We are matching up with all the various portfolio measures we're using. We're also having preliminary talks with our financial advisor to look at our next bond sale, which I anticipate to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million in May. So you're not going to hear me complaining a lot about low interest rates at this point in time. This is the time of year where lower is much better because although we do invest a lot of money, we borrow substantially more. And so that's those discussions are being had right now as we gear up and Tim works on draw schedule for the next year. We earned $631,000 for the month of January and nearly $2.9 million for the year to date. Be happy to answer any questions. The investment report and the financial statements are attached.
Good job, John.
Okay, I'm moving to consider any items removed from the consent agenda. There are none. Board President's report. The only thing I have is the student showcase that was formerly called Techno Expo is this Thursday, February 28th at 5:30 at Northwest High School. And now, Superintendent's report.
Very good. Just a couple of things, Board. Number one, of course, I told you Steve and I are going to be going to Austin tomorrow, and we're going to try to represent well in front of our legislators. Remember, if you get any questions about this, our board applications for Josh's position, vacated position, place 1, we're going to accept those all the way through 5 p.m. This coming Monday, May the 4th. So those are still being what did I say? March 4th for the May election. How's that sound? Last thing, and Board, I don't try to end on a negative note, but there's something that we've got a challenge, and we're going to jump into this challenge with both feet. You know, everything that we talk about in our board meetings are important. Everything is serious. You know, the school finance is serious. Our staffing is serious. The buildings that we're putting up is serious. But we can never take our eyes off our kids. And we've got an issue. We've got a significant issue, and it revolves around drug use and drug abuse with our children. Started the conversation with the e-cigarettes, the vaping, and it is rampant. It is rampant in our schools, but we're also seeing kids making some really bad decisions with some harder drugs, you know, from marijuana all the way to whatever you can imagine. We're going to take the initiative, and we're going to plan some events. The high schools have already done a phenomenal job. The leaders of our high schools have already taken that mantle up, and they're going to host some nights to discuss these issues with parents, and I'll send you those dates. I'm actually going to do a couple of three things. I'm actually going to make a video to the students. I'm going to go to our studio at Northwest High School. We're going to make a video to our students. I've asked Christy Hobbs to reword, and I'm going to ask you in the very near future to look at some revisions of our code of conduct to make the e-cigarettes more punishable, up the level of consequences that students will face if we have them in school. And we're also going to do a Facebook Live and talking to parents about what decisions our kids are getting, because we're seeing this a lot, and we're gonna get ahead of it, because if we get behind it, it's very, very hard to catch up. So you're going to have my commitment to do a lot of talking. We're going to be very honest with people. You know, we know we're in a special place. We know we have special children, and we cannot let them make these kind of decisions without us attempting to fix it. So that's all I have, Mrs. Scott. I'll just be prepared for that, and you may very well get questions. Anything that I say out there, anything that I write, I will give you copies of. Scary.